And live we are.
Welcome everybody to Saturdays with Tara. I'm Mary Beth at the Law of Attraction Club on the web at theloaclub.com. Remember, if you have a question or a comment, please unmute yourself or type in the chat box to the right of your screen. Robin will be bringing through Tara for us this morning. So welcome to Tara and Robin, and over to you.
And welcome to you all. This journey we're on here, this journey of discovery about all of these things is an evolution, is it not? It is an unfolding. And here we are once again tackling the subject of who are you? And we have asked and answered this question before, of course, but as we head into the new 12-month Living with Source program within this community, in which some of you will be, quote-unquote, learning to channel. With this one on the team here, we've been revisiting the topic of what channeling really is. And in that process, we have also been revisiting this particular question, inherently in all of that, because it cuts to the heart of it all, you see. In what follows, we are, as always, tackling infinite subjects with very finite language. And we wish to make it clear here at the start that these will be approximations. Because we are using a language, we're using earthly language, we're using words, and words have different meanings for different people. But in any case, they are all part of a finite world. And so we stress at the point here that although we are taking you on a journey here today, and we will be describing that journey with different words and different concepts, that we are using these as a way of getting to the heart of it all. And we encourage you not to let the fact that these are approximations sidetrack you away from this. And we suggest if it all seems too detailed or esoteric, just move on and let these thoughts take within you the time that it takes for them to form, to understand. The detail here is for those who seek it. In the end, it is all elegantly and divinely simple, as you might expect. Also, in the end, and the bottom line, as we often say, is all about choosing to feel good, and thereby knowing that you are heading exactly in the direction you want to go. And when you get down to it, that is all you ever really need to understand about any of this. So let us start from that which is absolute, the absolute absolute, the timeless, spaceless, collective consciousness that is all that is. And it is difficult to describe in language. You can think of it as pure positive energy, although the word positive here serves only to emphasize that there's nothing negative about it. In another sense, it is pure joy or pure love. It creates nothing because it is all that is. It is the Alpha and the Omega. It is the beginning and the end. It is everything. There is nothing beyond or above or below this collective consciousness. It is without borders and boundaries. It has no form. It just is. In this realm, everything and nothing mean the same thing. For some of you then, the immediate question that comes up, where does God fit into all of this? Well, we would say if by God you mean an eternal, all-powerful creator of everything, we suggest you hold that question until later in this discussion. Let's first be clear about who you are. And if in the process you start to see who God is, then you will have answered your own question. And this is a sensitive topic for many, because they have a concept of God, do they not? And any challenge to that concept meets a certain resistance. And yet, we cannot accurately describe who you are and what the law of attraction is without going into some aspects of that that may indeed challenge some of those concepts of God. And so, if we are to be clear and truthful about the law of attraction, it says to all of you that you have godlike powers. And if you do not have godlike powers, then the law of attraction makes no sense at all. Because it declares, we declare, that there's nothing you cannot be, do, or have. There's nothing you cannot change. It is as easy to create a galaxy as it is to bake a hot meal. And so we say to you, if you are concerned about the God in all of this, just hold that thought. And if at the end the explanation to you does not hold complete, then take what you will and go where you may. And if it does, if it resonates with you, then you will have journeyed here today in a direction that helps you understand it all. So let us proceed here. Let's move to you. Who are you? You are a consciousness, a part of, or an extension of, if you like, that one collective consciousness of all that is. You are not a physical being. The time-space physicalness that is you, and that is the world around you, is simply the stage on which your chosen story is playing out. You are a timeless, non-physical consciousness having a time-space physical experience. The experience is real. The story is a work of fiction. The story is simply the illusion that provides the context for the experience. Now let's start at the beginning of you. The thinking you that is engaged here and now in this discussion. And you can all identify with that. It is what is listening to these words or reading these words. And here's some of our approximations, of course, because there will be some chicken and egg aspects to this, as in, which came first, the intention that forms the consciousness, or the consciousness that has the intention? Of course, where there is no time, in a timeless realm, there is no problem with this. But since you, in this space-time reality, tend to think in terms of space and time, it can be challenging to think in terms of no space, no shape, and no time. So for simplicity's sake, we'll talk about a progression here, a time progression. This is you, and this is your story. This you, this thinking you, was born out of all that is. You were defined by an intention. You began as that intention and a desire for a new experience, to create. You made a choice to experience some degree of individualism, to become something out of everything, and experience other some things. Then those experiences led you to new desires, new choices, and yet more experiences. With each choice, you step into a new version of you, and a new matching environment, a new context, or if you like in our environment, you might call it a realm, wraps itself around you. It is very simple. It's what you call the law of attraction, and it is as fundamental as you are. For those of you who are seeking to know it all, it's worth adding here that with each choice, and we've talked about this many times, there's an alternate version of you that experiences an alternate choice. Both versions exist. Infinite versions exist simultaneously. If you choose to go left at the fork, there's another equally valid version of you that goes right. Because of your chosen focus, you may be only aware of one version because of the way you have chosen to structure your consciousness. You may be only aware of one version. This one you seem to be inhabiting. But that other version of you also exists, and we will come to why this is significant shortly. Let's look at some of the aspects of the bigger you. And as we do that, we're going to be using some labels. Once again, we are talking about approximations here. You may have your own labels and descriptions for these aspects. It matters not. We are all talking about the same you. Even as we use these labels, we encourage you not to get too attached to the idea that these are discrete, definable clumps, because in truth there are no boundaries within this creation of yours. They are simply representative of the swirl of energy that is you. It's just that it's useful for us to consider these concepts to get beyond what it might at first seem complexities. We want to get to beyond the complex, to the elegant, simple truth that lies beneath it all. Through all that progression and shape changing, this part of the consciousness you perceive as the thinking you is making all the choices. There is no thing and no body that is making choices for you. Choice is the essence of who you are. This you chooses what to believe and expect. At the most fundamental level, those choices create the different aspects of the bigger you, including what we would approximately describe as the subconscious you and your higher self or inner being. So can you see it at a very fundamental level of choice here? You are deciding the shape of you, of your consciousness. And then as we get to a more detailed level, these choices create the physical you and the physical and non-physical worlds around you. Let's just look at this thing here called the subconscious you. Now, from a physical sense in your space-time world, you have spent a lifetime training your subconscious to do things for you. It makes almost all of your decisions. You have trained it how to do things. You have trained it how to walk. When you learned to walk, at first it took a great deal of concentration. And then as you learned, you passed that information to your subconscious and said, okay, I think we got it. You take care of the walking. And we say to you now, if you stood up and walked to the door and back as an exercise, that your subconscious would be making an enormous amount of decisions along the way. How to stand up, how to balance on two legs, where to put your feet, how to avoid obstacles perhaps between you and the door. And yet you are conscious of none of these things. All that you know is you walked to the door and back. When you speak, And this is a useful thing to understand. When you speak in normal speech to people that you know, you do not think of the words you are going to use. You have a block of thought. You have an idea you wish to express. You have a reaction to a question that you wish to respond to. You do not think of the words to say. You have a block of thought. You say to your subconscious, produce the words, and it does. Many of you have a fear of public speaking. And that is because when you are standing before a number of people and you feel that every word is important, you are trying to speak words. You are trying to think of the words you wish to say. And you cannot think of the words you wish to say at the same time as thinking of what you're going to say next. So it is a very uncomfortable and stressful way to attempt to speak. And that is why you fear it. Those polished at public speaking have got past that to the understanding that they allow their subconscious to say the words. Once again, they have dropped into normal speech even though it is in front of a large number of people. And so can you see how important this thing called your subconscious is? In this one's world, it is assessed as many thousand times as fast in terms of capability as that conscious processor that you have. And yet, can you also see that there is no boundary between the two? If we said to you right now, stop breathing for 5 seconds, you could do that. But until we said that, you weren't thinking of your breathing. It was happening automatically. So you can cross that boundary between having your subconscious breathe you, in a sense, and consciously doing your breathing. When we said stand up and walk to the door, but this time we want you to choose where you put your feet consciously. You could do that. You could take over that function. And so can you see that there is no real hard and fast boundary between the conscious you and the subconscious you? And we want you to understand this as an illustration of the fact there are no real hard and fast boundaries between any of this. Anything that is has no boundaries in truth from anything else. And can you also see that if you can understand that you have trained your subconscious to do all these things for you, and without it you would be in a mess indeed, because you would be having to do consciously everything, and that would be an overwhelming task. You could not function without it. You have trained it to do all of these things. And can't you see that in a similar way, because of the beliefs and choices you have made, you have stored a pattern of expectations. If you like, you have trained something and written it into your blueprint or your screenplay, however you choose to think of it. You have written it in there and you have said, take care of it. And the law of attraction delivers to you that which is a reflection of that, a reflection of you. It is somewhat analogous to this subconscious of yours. And it probably is not too much of a stretch for you to understand that there is also no boundary between this storage place of the blueprint of you and your world and your subconscious. There's no boundary between the conscious you and that store of information, that store of expectations. And if we say to you, what do you expect about this particular subject? What do you expect your government to do about this next month? You could say, this is what I expect. And you can deal with that at a fairly high level, or you can allow yourself to go really deep and say, what do I really expect? Do I really expect to be healthy? Do I really expect to have this relationship be a loving and supportive and wonderful exploration? Do I really expect my body to be this way or that way? And if you allow yourself to go into that, we have called it a library on occasion, into that library and read those books, you can do so. Now, it would take you a long time to consciously explore all of that information because you have spent a lifetime, if you will, storing it. And can you see with all of this that we are wanting you to know that you, this conscious thinking you, that seems simple and small here, is in fact the thing that is the architect of it all. And all these other elements we are describing are what you have created as a supporting mechanism around you in this journey of yours, in this adventure that you are on. You are the one in charge. And of course, at the more detailed level, those choices of yours have created this physical you, and they've created the physical world around you, and they've created the non-physical world around you, and that includes us. You have created us, even as we have created you. You see, the same applies to both of us. In our realm, we have attracted into our experience that which is fun to play with, you, in answering your questions, in leading you in directions that you are seeking to go, in encouraging you into an understanding of different things, as you have asked us to do. We are a match to you, you are a match to us. You, in effect, have created us even as we have created you. So, there's this thinking you see, this thing that is hearing these words. It is a significant and godlike part of all that is, and it is you. At some point in this long progression of created choices, in order to have this particular experience, you chose to narrow the focus of this consciousness as you down into the form that it is now, with which you are now familiar. Mostly having one thought at a time, dealing with one subject at a time, experiencing only one version of you at a time. Here is a very fundamental choices that you have made. This very fundamental choice about the rules of the game that you are playing. So here you are, living on planet Earth in this physical form. So what about those other people and things that seem to be in your world? Well, they are simply the versions of everyone and everything that match your expectations. And here's where those previously mentioned different versions are important. Different versions of you are matching up with different versions of them. You are all dancing together in multiple versions of reality. But each of you is totally in charge of your own story and your own world. That's the miracle of what you call the law of attraction. What looks like one solid, continuous, shared world is really a collage of matching intersections. You can think of it as a movie that's playing in your mind. Now we know this movie, the space-time movie of yours, can be very engaging. It wouldn't be much of a game to play, much of a movie if it were not, would it? It is mesmerizing. So mesmerizing, in fact, that many of you forget who you are and how you got here. But none of this progressive creation has ever created any real separation between you and all that is, or between you and entities like us. Remember, there are no boundaries here. There can be no separation. There are no boundaries. You may not be consciously aware of the connection, but it is always there. Without it, you wouldn't exist. There's an eternal conversation going on between the different aspects of the bigger you, between you and your subconscious, between you and your higher self, between you and your inner being, between you and the collective consciousness and all that is. There's an eternal conversation going on. To give you some idea of the nature of this connection, consider this. Whenever you have out of the blue, so to speak, a new idea, where do you think that comes from? What causes a new, fresh, previously unthought idea to appear in this stream of consciousness of yours? Or some of you physically focused beings would describe it as a random firing of neurons in your brain. And it's not that. It comes from that ongoing conversation we talked about. It's a collaboration, even as this process of channeling is a collaboration. It comes from the collective you and beyond that collective you. Now, of course, we'll be getting into more detail on all of this for those of you who will be joining the Living with Source program. But what we are describing here is the simple mechanism behind what we call channeling, what you call channeling, what is perhaps better described as a translation of a block of thought. In the same way that you speak, you are translating a block of thought. It is just a block of thought now that is a collaboration. It has now got something new and outside of you in it. So, can you see how connected you are, even if you're unaware of most of it? Can you see that all of these aspects are a part of you? And can you see by that sequence, by that train of decisions you have made, your choices about what to believe and expect, how you have created it all? You are not a tiny speck on a huge planet. All of this comes from within you. It's an inside job. You can think of, in this game of yours, your sight as interpreting light flowing off of things and thereby being able to make some sense of what is around you physically. You can also, we would suggest more validly, perceive that the mechanism of sight is really the projection of all of this story into the movie of your mind. It is all an inside job. So who are you? You are a consciousness, part of the collective consciousness. And you are truly an eternal, all-powerful creator of everything in your world. In this world, you intersect with other parts of the collective consciousness, like all the matching versions of other people on your planet. And non-physically, you may match up with the likes of us, for example. We are all of us, you and we, eternal, powerful creators of everything in our respective worlds. And so can you say why you would then say you and we are all gods in every sense of the word? It's just that some versions of you playing the earth game here have become so caught up in it, you've forgotten who you are. And we're just here to remind you of your origins. And of course, ultimately, that nothing is more important than feeling good. Because of course, all of this mechanism, this somewhat constructive talk here about who you are, is all of it in the end designed to help you get to the place of experiencing who you are. And when you get this, when you really, really get it, we feel a wave of comprehension sweep over you. As you move beyond that sort of understanding intellectually of what it is, to a place of experiencing it, to a place of truly feeling who you are, the power that you are. And of course, that's where we want you to be. That's when the fun really starts. Then we say, play on, create as you wish. Be easy about everything, and most of all, enjoy yourself. There is not and there cannot ever be any higher purpose than that. And before we close, we would say, can you not see that? That if you chose to fashion yourself out of the clay of all that is into something that could experience the joy of creating in different environments, can you not see that that creation, that conscious act of doing that has to be the thing that most gives you pleasure, because that is what you set out to do. And there's no limit, there's no direction that is prescribed, there's nobody saying you did this right and you did that wrong. There is no judgment here. There can be no judgment because the choices are all yours. We are simply suggesting to you that as you discover who you are, allow yourself to step back into the real you, the bigger you. Allow yourself to get a sense of who you are. And as you do that, you will see that, you will feel that, you will understand that you are the one shaping the clay here. And so it is that you will move forward in joy in this world of yours, in this creation of yours. And so it is that you will understand that there is nothing you cannot be, do, or have. You will understand that there is no direction you cannot go. There is not, and there cannot ever be, any higher purpose than that. That is why you came here. We have enjoyed this opportunity to discuss this with you, and if there are questions, Mary Beth, we will enjoy answering those.
Okay, everybody, remember to unmute yourself or type your question in the chat window to the right of your screen. Anybody have a question? I actually do not have a question. I can't believe it. Giora, do you have something?
Then we have been very complete in our description here.
Absolutely.
I have some thought.
Good. Go for it.
In order to realize who we are experientially, it helps a lot. I mean, I don't have the. I'm defining as I'm talking. Every one of us has a game that we're playing, and in many games, I think in all of the games, there's some aspect of it like something that doesn't work, something that we wanted so badly and just doesn't work, and we struggle with it for a lifetime, all the time trying to succeed, and the mere trying to succeed actually confirms that we think that we cannot succeed.
Indeed.
So if we, like, just as a strategy, right? And the reason I say it is because we didn't talk about it clearly in the past. We talked about the release technique. But if we, it's like living in a conflict in which we want something and at the same time we believe that we can't have it.
Yes.
And that's the essence. That's like the the secret code of our game many times, that keeps us kind of locked in the game without ability to come out of the perspective, the narrow perspective of the game. And so I myself kind of experienced it through art, and we talked about it, I think, yesterday or the day before. Um, um, if in this condition I just admit that in the level I am, I failed in succeeding in what I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
I admit failing and I accept failing completely and I let go of the struggle. Then suddenly there is a relief and the struggle doesn't hold me anymore and I become more open to discover more of who I am. So does it make sense to you, Tara?
Of course.
There is no failing, though.
But this is the mechanism that Giora has
Yes, I get it.
selected to
Yes.
to make a shift in something that is a little obstinate, shall we say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it looks stuck.
Yes, it looks stuck. And so can you see, Giora, this is just another version of letting go, if you will.
Yeah.
And so it is the Giora version 5 of letting go. And we say, whatever mechanism you select to allow yourself to let go, to allow yourself to free yourself up from that previously made decision, whatever mechanism you select that works for you, go for it. Go for it, go for it.
Mm-hmm.
And it is, if it is, for example, to say, I've done this for 5 years, and so far I've been unsuccessful. And if your mechanism says, from that perspective, I have failed, and if then your mechanism says, that allows me to go, okay. And if your mechanism says, let me now start from this new place and examine who I am and what I am, and we say, go for it. But it is a technique, you see. It is a thought process. And when things are obstinate, and each of you has obstinate things within your structures here that you have chosen. So we are talking to you all. When things are obstinate, and what you have done so far seems not to move things around very much, then we encourage you to try different things. We encourage you to make up stories about what can be a way to change and follow those stories. We encourage you to explore any method that will allow you to step into the role of the creator that you are. Well, there is no method that is right or wrong. There are just some things that work for some and better for some and not so good for others. Each of you will make your own decisions about that. Each of you, as you rightly point out, Giora, is on your own journey, on your own story. There is not the story of you and billions of other people on this planet. There is the story of you creating a planet with billions of other people on it. And the difference is subtle, but the difference is extremely important because it is, after all, you that's at the center of this world and this creative process. Even as, of course, you are a supporting actor in other people's story, even as you are one of the extras in that movie of that person over there who sees you passing in the street. Of course, you are, in one version of you, in that movie, in a variety of roles. But that's their story. And here you are, this is your story, and this is the point of focus. This is the way of seeing things that we are encouraging you into. It is not a shared story, it is your story. And therefore allowing yourself to be at this core of everything and conceptually to understand the power that that gives you is what we are encouraging you into here. So, did we answer your question or comment, Giora?
Yes, yes.
Good. So we've used the comparison today between your subconscious and what you have taught it. And if you like, the law of attraction and what you have taught it to provide. And that's a crude way of describing it, but let us proceed with that. And we have also wanted you to understand that there's not much difference between those two things, that there is no, in fact, boundary between them. There are just some things that are more obviously part of the subconscious place, and some things that are more obviously part of your pattern, your tapestry of beliefs and expectations. But it's just one thing, really, one swirling reach of energy. And in all of this, here you are, consciously you, thinking, consciously creating. This is the adventure that you are on. And thinking of those other things in terms of components or clumps can be useful in picking out the things that you want to do and the way you want to do them. We just caution you against trying to extrapolate too far from the clump picture, because when you do, you start to run into the problems of analogies and metaphors. None is complete, none really understands it, because even in these words that we are using, we are trying to describe infinity to you. And in a finite world, infinity is an impossible concept. And yet here we are. And it is our intent that these words will convey to you some idea of who you are and how it all works. And we have used these different words and clumps and places and pieces of you to try and give you a picture of that. And those pictures are all true. We just encourage you not to use them too literally, but to allow that understanding to really become just a more general understanding, because you cannot describe three-dimensional objects on a two-dimensional space. You cannot describe four-dimensional objects in a three-dimensional space. In other words, you live in a three-dimensional world. What does a fourth dimension mean in that context? And the answer is a fourth dimension in this context is meaningless. And so we are like, if you like, trying to describe three dimensions to a two-dimensional world. It is hard to put the infinite into the finite world. And yet, as we said, understanding who you are is in part a process of opening yourself up to understanding the infinite. And we understand also that in that process, many of you have formed ideas about what that infinite is. As we have said, there are many in this one's world who have a definition of what God is. And some are prepared to fight wars and kill people over that definition of God. Others have a much more loving and caring idea of what this God is. But in the end, we cannot convey to you the degree to which you are in charge unless we put you firmly in that place, unless we say to you, the consciousness that is you is God in every sense of the word. You have all the power and the ability and the compassion and the love that suggests, that word embodies. And so here you are, this godlike creature. And you are in this game, in this dance, with all of us other godlike creatures. And what a fun game it is it not? And that is why we love mixing it up with you and exploring these subjects in great detail.
Well, I think we're about ready to close.
Helen.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Helen. Sorry about that.
I just remember how to ask a question, so that's why it took me so long. Anyways,
Good.
Do we choose unhappiness, or is it a default of just not choosing happiness?
Let us start at the beginning of this, Helen, to some extent. Let us take you back to the choices you made. If you like, way back. Although there is no time, we'll use that, of course,
Pardon
as
me?
an approximation here.
Oh, sure.
We'll use that as this is an approximation. So we'll take you way back, and you chose to become an individual out
he
of
can play too.
all of this,
I need to
all that
get
is.
him off. There we go.
We will wait until you're ready, Helen. So, you chose this game, and you could say this game, this particular game, is a very extreme game. You know, you have heard us use the words, you are here on the leading edge of creation. What does that mean? You have chosen a degree of focus and a degree of narrowing down here of your consciousness, as we said, to one thing at a time, to one subject at a time, mostly, to one version of you at a time. You have chosen that as the rules of this game. And we have used the word extreme here. It is, if you like, a very different degree of focus of consciousness than the one that we have, for example. And in that very different place, you are in this world dealing with space-time things. And as you have learned to deal with those in this world, you become mesmerized by the game. And so to a certain extent, you've forgotten, you get separated from, sometimes pinch yourself off a little from the source of who you are. And as you do that, you encounter things that are not what you would like. Sometimes you encounter things that are very much not what you would like. But that is the nature of the game you have chosen. We have just said here, and that is inherent in the game. It is inherent in the decisions that you made. It is inherent within the rules of the game that you have designed here. Contrast happens to all of us. It's just that you have chosen an extreme level of the game, and therefore the consciousness that you are is going to experience, if you like, a more extreme level of contrast. You will find more ups and downs than we might find in this game of yours. And so here you are experiencing that. And yes, it is inherent in the game. You didn't choose to be unhappy. You didn't choose this game to be unhappy. You chose this game for the thrill of creating new things. And in the process, you stepped into this concentrated environment here. And sometimes you allow yourself to get to the place of being unhappy in that process. And we suggest to you, in that case and in those situations, remember who you are. As we have always said, step back from the game and get into the stands for a short time. Allow yourself to get some perspective on this. Step back into that context you are creating and see what's going on here. Step out of the context and see what is going on here. And so you will see that there is no predestination for unhappiness here. There is no predestination for misery and suffering. And yet, there can be some of that if you allow yourself to get disconnected, if you allow yourself to be pulled off course, if you allow yourself to settle for things that you must do that do not feel good. And so it is, yes, an inherent part of this game. It is an inherent part of what you have chosen, and we are here to help you see that. It is not necessarily a function of what must happen in this game. You can step into a different place. You can step into a higher version of the game. You can step out of the game altogether if you wish. And in different versions of you, you are doing all of those things. And so we would ask Helen if we had answered her question, but she seems to have dropped off. So
Yes, she has. So you have basically wrapped up. Would you like to say any closing words?
Just that we have enjoyed this interaction enormously. We have, if you like, been somewhat more stark in the way we have described things than we have done previously. But that is in an effort to have you understand the truth of who you are. And for those of you who are seeking this detail, we are responding to your questions. And for now, we are complete.
Thank you, Tara and Robin, and thank you everybody for coming. Much love.
Okay, so thanks everybody, and we'll catch up with you soon.